Welcome to Buying Sandlot. Today we talk about the Elite Soccer Academy with no soccer team. League Apps announces a new feature, and Focus on the Field's Tyler Kreitz comes on, and we have a little state of the industry conversation. But before we get into that, tickets for our Buying Sandlot Summit in Philly on April 14th and 15th are still available. Get those over at buyingsandlot.com or the link in this show's description. We'll have executives from Huddle, Game Changer, Perfect Game, all speaking, and panels around tech's heavy hitters, streaming, data, facilities, and consolidation, and more panels and more speakers that you won't want to miss. Not to mention, obviously, networking, all in the state-of-the-art Switch House and Ballers. Check out the newsletters. We'll be announcing more updates as we get closer to the event. And we also want to thank Event Connect and our other sponsors who help power the show and allow us to continue to show up in your inboxes and podcast feeds. Great newsletter today. Shout out to you and James for putting that together. A lot of takes. One that we wanted to touch on first was the Pathway School program, which I think is an interesting business model. It's down in South Florida where our friends are at IMG, but it's a little different than IMG. The Pathway School is a high-performance academy for elite athlete development, focused primarily on soccer, but here's the kicker, no pun intended. It doesn't have a soccer team. The kids all play for club teams outside the program. They just go to school, train, and develop at Pathways. I'm going to call this the specialization without the professionalization. You like that?
Maybe, because then they kick out all the kids in 8th grade who aren't good enough because everyone in high school's got to be a pro prospect.
That is fair.
We may want to workshop that a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah,
they
see what you're getting at.
A different trend than you're used to seeing, I'm thinking, in these elite academies, but it feels like it's a holistic nature of development and training. Is that better? Do you like that trend a lot more?
I like that a little bit. Yeah. I think I'll read a little bit of my take here just because it'll be more succinct than I would say it off the cuff. So I wrote right after this in the newsletter, I said, it's yet another take on a trend of academics and athletics coming into balance in education. We've talked about this, whether it's IMG and upstarts like the Bennett School, which was what we talked about last week, or PE-backed clubs like San Diego and Curve Sports looking to get into the academy game, and or pathway schools. There's lots of new ideas taking shape on how to combine education and sports as part of a curriculum. I continue to believe the macro theme of AI taking over everything underpins many of these concepts. As AI compresses traditional academics, education models that reallocate time toward what makes us human, i.e. sports, arts experiences, will gain traction. And I think you'll see lots of trial and error here, but there's definitely some big winners to be had, even if I still worry about kind of like AI learning. Not that that's what Pathway Schools does necessarily, but a lot of these are sort of part and parcel with AI learning, unlocking more hours in the day. I do worry about what the negatives of that we don't know much about yet. But just another one of those things where you have sports and academics and sports taking place before 3 p.m. And just another take on that broad concept.
Yeah. I'm pretty bullish on the holistic approach to development.
Big holistic guy.
Development, training, mental, and psychological. But that was one of their core pillars on their website that I was looking at. They focus on sports psychology and mental performance curriculum. CEO Daniel Villegas told us, we're club neutral. We're not going to compete against them. That's not our goal. We want to give them supplemental training. If the coach calls us from X club and says this kid needs to rest today, perfect. Hey, I want you to work with him on this. Perfect. We don't have an ego. We're here to make the kid better so that when they go back to your team, they're performing at their peak. I guess if I was coming at this from like a parent perspective, and maybe I was a little weary of the IMGs and I didn't want my kid to maybe I wanted my kid to have more of a natural upbringing, that there's no boarding school campus on Pathway Schools. I would see this as I can still get the elite training and the kid can come home for dinner and he doesn't have to go away to boarding school. I could see that kind of if I was a parent, why this would work for some.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think there's people who maybe want to give their kids more sports education, but don't want to send them off. I think so. Daniel's coming to the conference, I believe. I think he'd emailed me a couple of weeks ago. So if you're coming to the event, you can speak to people like Daniel and more. I think we said in the article here, he's looking to raise money. He also owns a Soccer Shots. He's also a Soccer Shots franchise owner. Starts at grade 3, right? So there's some specialization clearly that goes along with this. And further down the newsletter, we have yet another report on sort of the physical impacts, the negative impacts of specialization. So there's these two trends, and frankly, they're at odds with each other, right? On one hand, you have the marrying of sports as part of curriculum, and I think a lot of times that comes through a single sport, right? Most of these ideas I've seen the Bennett School isn't doing an hour of football, soccer, and basketball. They're doing 3 hours of baseball. Pathway Schools is soccer only today, though they have thought about, like Bennett School has, like IMG did in the past, from tennis to multi-sport, about expanding across sports. But today it's about specializing, and all the data that we're covering, and I think the industry is seeing, is that specialization isn't inherently good. It doesn't always make the best pros, and there's lots of downsides in terms of burnout and now physical injuries, which is a pretty well documented thing. So it's interesting to see how this plays out, and maybe it all just like dovetails right into the thing we've talked about here before, is the opportunity around multi-sport clubs, multi-sport sport education. And again, when you kind of talk this through, it sounds like we're describing schools, right? Education, multiple sports. But I do think the balance of power over time, whether it's just traditional private schools or these newfangled ideas, will sort of coalesce around the distribution of academics. Instead of 5 hours plus an hour and a half of sports, maybe it's 3 and 2. Maybe like IMG, it's like 4 and 4, right? At Bennett, it's 2 and 6, right? So everyone's just sort of playing around with the balance. Maybe we end up somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Something I would be interested in asking Daniel, I wonder if they share the data or the tracking with the clubs. I wonder how the clubs, what they might get out of this and stuff. Obviously, you get elite performance training, and the articles that you were referencing from the New York Times and from the AP, it said the rise of ACL tears in girls' sports. Data shows girls are at least twice as likely to tear their ACL as boys are. I think there was some data that said they were 8 times more likely. That one scientist just found. And we've talked about this before. The U.S. has a goal for participation rates in 2030. One of the fastest emerging participation groups are women. A lot of times when you do tear your ACL at a young age, that might stunt, participation, because people don't want to get back out there after a years long time on the shelf and get back to playing. So I think some of these, like these pathway schools, which they also, I would assume, don't have as much scrutiny, because they're not, they don't have a team. I think that's IMG sometimes is fair or unfair scrutinized, because when you look at that and you look at a school that has, top 10, top 25 teams in every sport, you think you're just a sports performance factory and not necessarily a school. So I think with that mixed with, the elite training and development they get there at Pathways, this would help for the longer, participation rates and stuff that the 2030 that the U.S. wants to see.
Yeah. I mean, obviously this skews towards the elite end of the spectrum either way. But yeah, it's an interesting take. And it was largely founded, it sounds like, coming out of COVID. Students were homeschooled. A lot of this comes out of Florida, right? They weren't happy with the public school situation in Florida, and hey, we're going to start our own thing. And then kids are homeschooled. And then there's these programs that bring homeschool kids into locations that begin to look like schools, right? There's this great saying, if anyone ever reads, have you ever heard of Stratechery and Ben Thompson? Okay. So he's pretty good. He's been writing on technology and business for over a decade. And he always describes everything as unbundling and rebundling. And the canonical example of that is the cable industry. Everyone had a cable bundle. Everyone cut the cord and started subscribing to specific things. And then over time, to get everything you wanted, it's starting to get bundled back together. And lo and behold, YouTube TV costs as much as cable used to, and things like that. And I think you see that everywhere in the world. Once you understand that concept, take homeschooling, right? Parents send kids home, and then after a while, it's like, hey, well, let's get them together in small groups to do small group things, and then let's add sports to that. Now all of a sudden, you have pathway schools, an accredited school, right? And things just kind of ebb and flow. And I think we're going to see a lot of that in everything we talked about before with specialization and education and athletics coming together. Like right now, all these things look like really newfangled ideas. Let's do 2 hours of AI learning and then 4 hours of baseball, or let's mix soccer and small classrooms together at pathway schools, and then let those kids go play for their clubs. But ultimately, as we talk it through, you kind of just wind up with something looking a lot like school at the end of the day. And maybe the mix is different, but you have education and sports together. And at the end of the day, maybe it just all winds up that the more progressive or cutting edge private schools that already exist and have existed for maybe 100 years or decades just start thinking they could experiment more or push the envelope more in terms of how they cut up their days. So maybe that's just where this all leads. Maybe private schools that already exist as academic institutions with sports begin to blend those things better, where they start acquiring things like this. But it's a fascinating space. I mean, you think about how big the education market is and how big the youth sports market is, and those two things I think are kind of coming together more aggressively than they have in some time.
All right, let's move along. Sportico published an op-ed from Michael Feely, a sports systems consultant. The title of the piece was "Youth Sports is the Safest Investment in the World, or Is It?" Feely's main argument is youth sports costs rose about 50%, while the U.S. birth rate declined 15% in the same span. I know you had some opinions on this in the newsletter, not because of the negative nature of it, but because you think this was written using ChatGPT and that the data is
dumb.
Isn't
dumb.
I was trying to put it as nice as possible, but yeah, you're 100% right.
So if you're listening and you don't like it when Kyle puts his media guy hat on, maybe just skip ahead 5 minutes here. But I think because Sportico being bad at covering the youth sports industry is why we exist, right? I think Sportico is less, I would say, less egregious with this than I think front office sports has been. But front office in particular, and Sportico to some degree, I think they're beginning to water down their coverage to try to appeal to the just general consumer of sports information and news.
Okay.
Again, I think front office sports is more guilty of this than Sportico, but they both do it, which means they're trying. I think they're going for big numbers. And hey, what article can we write to get the most number of impressions? Which is ultimately what lots of media companies, it's kind of how you exist as a media company. But when you're doing specialized B2B, business to business coverage, it's like what we do here. And we've talked about this offline 100 times. If we get 100,000 views on a video, which we've gotten on some of these or close to it, that's great and all, but it's generally not benefiting the business much. We really care about the 15 to 20 to 25,000 people who are day in, day out working, investing, and operating businesses in youth sports. There's just a finite number of those people. And as long as we continue to serve them, it's great when we put out a video and it gets a ton of impressions. And I think we do and can sell advertising on those impressions, but it will always be a nice to have. I think Sportico and front office sports have fallen in the trap of playing into the numbers and writing articles that look more just like closer to something you would find on ESPN. It's almost covering the sport. In some cases, they're talking about athlete contracts and the same way ESPN would, and they're beginning to blur the lines there. And it's like, that's fine. Hundreds of millions of views I'm sure they're getting, and they're making ad dollars. But the more you do that, the less you serve the people in any given industry. And I think they're casting such a wide net. And they're allowing, I think this is like an op-ed or a paid op-ed possibly, that they allow people to write. And every time I read one, there's a few things in common. They're always written by ChatGPT. It's so obvious when you read this. Even if you don't pay attention that closely, you could feel how this comes from an AI. I would bet any amount of money that 80+% of this was purely AI generated on a single prompt. They weren't even trying to inject their own opinion. And B, it just completely misses the mark. It says, youth sports investment is a hot investment space, but if participation declines 3% a year and that compounds, you're going to talk about a 30% reduction in participation. It's like, what are you talking about? Then he brings up declining birth rates and okay, fine. But at the end of the day, youth sports in participation after 2020, when there was a more aggressive dip for a year and a half because of COVID, it's ticked up in 23, 24, and I'm sure we'll see the same when 25 numbers come out. In addition to that, for all the things we've talked about on here, how the government and private industry and philanthropic projects are thinking about raising participation rates, the country has a goal of getting to 63% participation. So all we see is increasing participation, lots of stakeholders trying to supercharge that over the next 4 years. And here you have a guy who writes an entire article about how maybe youth sports isn't a wise investment because it could go down 3% every year. And it's like, well, like if my mom had balls, she'd be my dad, right? Famous Max Verstappen quote, right? I censored that a bit in the newsletter and said, hey, if the ocean wasn't wet, it would be a desert. But like, I just don't understand why Sportico runs these things. Who is anyone editing it? It's an op-ed. It's not written by one of the writers. I don't even know the guy who wrote it. His name's Michael Feely, a British sports systems consultant. Usually these things have an angle. I'm honestly not even sure. I looked at his LinkedIn, what his angle is to downplay this. I'm sure there's some angle, but it's just garbage. It's just pure, not even opinion-based garbage because it was written by AI. It was like, hey, write me a doom scenario for youth sports that isn't based on reality. Go.
It's not X, it's Y.
It's not X, it's Y.
It always is.
Structural.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with it. Even his example of the Legends Sports Complex, I believe it was in Colorado. He used that, and it said it said basically there was not enough supply or not enough demand, for the supply of the sports complex. When I actually looked up before I even saw James's take in the news, that I looked up to see what happened to the Legends complex. It got shut down for safety issues, and it got shut down. It was in financial turmoil legal woes, turmoil, legal woes. It never really got off the ground. And I think the developer ended up declaring bankruptcy, and they sold it to somebody else who now operates it or something like that. It didn't seem like it was because they were having trouble filling tournaments there.
Yeah. So, I mean, he cherry picked an example of something that just went sort of belly up for reasons.
We've talked about it, Kyle. There are a lot of sports facilities that you could cherry pick. We talked about the ones that are 50 miles away from each other that don't necessarily make a lot of sense. I think we talked about one in Corpus Christi last week. We've talked about the ones that don't make financial sense.
Yeah, listen, there are plenty of examples, and I'm probably among the few who thinks that we're going to see some of these fail, as you have so many municipalities race to build these things. But he picked one example and used it as a case for demand on youth sports in general, and didn't tie it together to his participation claim. Again, junk. But he also sort of got that part wrong, which is, hey, these facilities aren't always financially successful. What he's missing, and I learned this very quickly when we started covering the space, is they don't have to be. So much of these are built around the tourism impact to the local communities that if the facility is at or about break even, it makes sense. And a lot of them have public funding. And we heard SFC, Sports Facilities Companies, which the S's will always get me, at Jefferies, talk about how they typically do these, I think, feasibility studies for roughly 50% of the projects are fully private, 50 have some component of public funding, but 80% of the ones that get greenlit have a component of public funding, which tells me that they don't always make financial dollars and cents for the private investor. But when you tie in that public tourism component, that's why these things can work. So as long as the demand is there, which I think is a question in terms of travel, some of these, these will be okay. I think we'll find plenty of examples of ones that don't work, but it has nothing to do with youth sports not being a growing industry and declining participation. And again, I don't understand what Sportico is doing.
All right, let's move over to Tyler Kreitz, focus on the field, to talk about a little state of the industry. All right, we got Tyler Kreitz, CEO, focus on the field. We wanted to bring you on. We wanted to have a little state of the industry kind of talk with you. We really enjoyed your LinkedIn post, your rant on Friday. It was a nice little Friday news dump, but not really Friday rant dump. I'm going to read it for the people who might have not seen it.
Completely coincidental that Tyler and Focus are the sponsor of the newsletter today. This is just the stars aligning. So
I haven't seen it. So that's fantastic. Good to know.
So this is the buying.
That is a surprise. I've been in the middle of it. So
ESPN used to have the ESPN car wash. Someone would go through, they would do all the shows, right? This is the Buying Sandlot car wash. You get the newsletter, the podcast, and then you'll be on SportsCenter tonight at 6.
I love what you guys are doing. So that is unintended, but great to hear.
There we go.
Thank you. This is what they call synergies. All right, let's get over to the post. All right, this is from Tyler. You follow on Tyler Kreitz on LinkedIn. I've been buried in sports ops the past few months. Not the sexy kind, not the vision deck, market map, growth strategy kind. Scheduling, actual game scheduling for my kids' spring rec team. Fields, times, refs, coaches, weather. Angry emails at 10:47 p.m. The unglamorous plumbing that actually makes games happen. It is not fun, but it is vital. I wrote something about kind of tongue-in-cheek, and came here to post it after coming up for air. But as I scroll LinkedIn, skim the latest youth sports reports, and watch the next wave of quotations innovation roll through, I can't help but feel like we're inflating a bubble made of buzzwords, and I'm the old man yelling at the clouds. The amount of nonsense being layered onto youth sports right now is staggering. 100 million youth sports complexes, 100 a month mental training apps for a little leaguer, private equity panels discussing monetizing the ecosystem. What the are we doing? Sports are basic: a field, a time, a ball, a coach. Who cares? It ain't rocket science. Yet money is conflating youth sports into something it isn't, and we, the people in this space, are making a bubble out of the bullshit. We're acting as if we just add enough capital, dashboards, biometric tracking, subscription layers, and performance consultants will manufacture better outcomes. Meanwhile, Norway quietly shows up to the Olympics and whoops everyone. We all saw the coverage. They don't have $100 million facilities on every corner. They don't have 9-year-olds on subscription-based mindset platforms. They don't treat childhood like a venture-backed growth vertical. They have infrastructure. They have access. They have schedules. And they make it about the kids. That's it. I'm not anti-innovation. I run a sports operations company. I believe in systems. I believe in software. I believe in making things run better. But there's a difference between supporting the game and inflating it. When I've been deep in scheduling, actually making sure kids have a place to play at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, the contrast is stark. None of the buzzwords matter if the field isn't lined and the ref doesn't show. I love that. Youth sports don't need to be financialized into oblivion. They need to be organized. They need to be accessible. They need adults who remember that the point is not the valuation, it's the experience. You can build a $100 million facility, or you can build a great Tuesday afternoon game. One of those is harder than it sounds, and it's not the facility. End of rant. I have a schedule I need to update. So like Kyle's told you, we pass that around the group chat. We love the rant. We love a good rant. I just want to know your head down scheduling. You finally come up for air. You see industry leaders posting their chat GP written, it's not X, it's Y formatted post. What was the breaking point that kind of gave the inspiration to craft this rant, you think?
And we got to ask, how much of it was AI? We know there was a little. How much was AI?
Everybody has a little bit of AI. No, like I said, I'm not anti-innovation. Like, we are leveraging the hell out of AI tools all the time. That actual rant, when I write, and if I did something, so true story, like not true story, but like the truth is, I actually was building a schedule out, like for a rec lacrosse shit. Like, I volunteer. I figure nobody knows this. I literally live and work in this world. Like, might as well volunteer my time and help. So my kids and the other day, we can go play the game. So John who runs, commercial real estate isn't stuck trying to figure out, hey, how should I schedule this? It makes more sense for me to do it. So really was doing that stuff. To answer your question about AI, I use it quite a bit. But the way I like to use it, how most people like to use it, I have my thoughts, I have my things I like to write. I'll write something, I'll run it through the blender, is what I call it, see what comes out, and then be like, and then I write it again. But it does. AI is a great editor. It's a great thought provoker. It's sometimes some of the turns of phrase I don't like at all, but sometimes it actually works. And sometimes it writes a turn of phrase. I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. So.
Well, I asked you in an endearing manner because I could tell that it came from like your actual thoughts and experiences. You could tell when someone just like, hey, AI, give me something. And somebody's like, hey, just help me out here, refine this. But I thought, excellent rant, like 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10, mic drop at the end.
The thing is, I don't feel like a rant. I really did feel like the old man yelling at the clouds. And I say this because it's not, I don't know so much a rant as I really want people to look at this, like, really, what in God's name is going on here? And it came from, we have conversations, and we've had a lot of conversations. And again, with the influx of money and capital, we have conversations with people with a lot of money and capital who are trying to do the next roll up. And that is you cut it all aside. A lot of people are private equities wants to buy a lot of organizations, roll them up together, find operational efficiencies, sell it to the next bidder. And then what? And I don't disavow that. I don't think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think the 3-step, I call it the 3-step model because that was the first one to do it. I actually think Chad Gruen at 3-step is one of the best people. I like Chad a lot. He was an advisor when I started Focus on the Field. He was incredibly bright, incredibly sharp, really believes in what sports are doing. And I think someone like that trying to make a better experience is great. So I'm not anti that. But the conversation, like this sort of rant came up when I sort of see, when I, on the periphery, in my feed, in my conversations, I hear about stuff that's like, is this actually helping and doing something that's going to put kids on a field to play? Is it making it more efficient? Is it making it easier? Is it making better? Or are we creating an AI-based scouting app to create the next NIL deal? Who does that, what is that doing? Like, does it create, like, one, is it solving a problem? 2, who does it benefit? And 3, if you're going to create money, do you really think this is going to create you, like, going to make money for you? I all of those things kind of came together, and it's like, all right, no joke. The thing is, my rant's getting more attention. My original post I wrote, I thought was better than my rant. My post was like how to schedule, like how hard it is. Like that was when I came to LinkedIn, like, hey man, I just went through this. Look at this. I have some tips for you, like the usual LinkedIn, shit. And I saw it, and I was like, oh, good God. And it kind of just, overwhelmed the system. And
now you know why Stephen A gets paid $10 million a year on ESPN. It's the rants.
The rants,
yeah.
The algos love the rants.
Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, Kyle, but like that's kind of where the genesis of it, where it came from.
No, it was perfect, and I agree. Like I agree with parts of it for sure. Like we wrote the mental models thing that someone read their Buying Sandlot last week because we covered the mental Kumba, right? Go ahead.
Honestly, the Kumba thing was actually part of what spurred it. Because again, the idea of it, and I think I put this out there because like the guys at Max U, Dan and the guys who run Max U, again, I love what this problem they're trying to solve, right? And the problem they're hitting at with mental health with kids is, again, they're trying to create, and they're doing it in a very thoughtful way to really create a tool that can help kids navigate through a sports system that, I'm older than you guys, but it's a lot different than what I grew up, and it's a lot different than what you grew up with, right? This sports world's different. So I love the idea of the tool. I hate that it exists. That a tool like that needs to exist. And then you compare that to Norway, right?
We've talked about Norway. So, yeah. Well, before we get to Norway, I had three things I touched on. So you mentioned mental health, sort of the PE roll up, and the complexes, right? So it sounds like, to clarify, like you're not necessarily down on all of those things existing, but is maybe a softer way of saying it that there's too much focus on the high flying, whiz bang, big investment dollars versus the blocking and tackling, the bread and butter of what makes youth sports work.
I think anybody coming in who doesn't have the connection or doesn't have the context around youth sports, they'll see. So the short answer, yes, absolutely. I'm not against private equity. I'm not against I'm not against mental health. I'm not against facilities, great facilities. I'm not against any of that. But I always think back to my old adage, and I always think about like the way like we're building our business, the way youth sports evolved, like the old Jeff Bezos thing, focus on the things that aren't going to change. Like the AI takeover, we could have a operational, like the internet could go down. You can still, through a phone tree, have a schedule of kids to show up at a field, right? Like it's a lot harder, but the basic essence of what we're doing is happening on a field. And to create and facilitate and make a better experience for that is what matters. And so anything that draws away from that, I think gets away from where you're solving true problems, and it becomes a bunch of fluff and bull. So I don't know if that nuance parses too much, and I don't want to speak out of both sides of my mouth, but I think that there's an element of people not really getting, especially those coming in who don't have sports experience, and seeing an operational, a sticky, resilient, I forgot the buzzwords that are floating around there about like how much parents spend and how it's not going to go away in times of recession. But like, I get it. Look, you have sticky spending going on from parents, and it's growing and people are attracted to it. Shoot, we should flow our money there. I understand that. But if you, and you see a TAM of what, 70 billion, people will come in and be like, hey, let's do that. But then you pull under the hood, a private equity group is going to want to make deals between 10 and $50 million. How many organizations in the youth sports industry have revenue to EBITDA or anything of that sort in that range? Like under 100. So, and I asked a private equity guy that who I was having a conversation with, and I said, you know this better than I, but like, how do you navigate that? Like, I mean, if your play is, I'm going to roll these things up, how do you do this? So I'm yelling at the clouds again, guys. Jesus.
Well,
I say this, I was really on a field all weekend helping facilitate a rec lacrosse tournament, which was awesome. And it was a play day and my kids got to play. So I'm fried, but I don't mean to yell at the clouds again.
I was in a basketball gym for 3 hours yesterday, coaching 7th grade basketball, and then at the gym next door for rec baseball evaluation. So I'm as in the weeds as you are, knee deep. Do you think we've talked about the sort of lack of companies that are in PE scale today, right? And look, the industry grows and consolidation happens. There'll be more dollars that are in a single investable company maybe over the next few years. But have you seen, in your opinion, one of the things we've heard a little bit is there's just such a lack of those companies that the ones are at scale or maybe able to like name a little bit of a premium right now because there's not that much to invest in and a whole bunch of investors trying to put money in and looking for places to put it. Do you think there's some truth to that?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. Yes. And I think the numbers just played out. More money coming in, fewer targets. To use a I'm not even going to use the analogy. Let's just say when there is a supply and demand risk, sometimes things get overinflated because there's very little supply.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go to a college bar on a certain night, and depending on the ratio, you see it plays out all the time. I may get myself canceled for that one.
Now, Kyle knows all about that. He's the youngest of the group here. You're closest to the bar.
What I mean?
Days.
It's just, I think there's a lot of people who are trying to make relationships happen, and there's very few people that can actually have those relationships.
Do you think there could be more money, more of the balance, the pie? Right now, I think you're seeing obviously tech, because tech scales and the tech companies are the biggest. You're seeing a lot in the travel and facility space, a lot of it backed by the tourism side of the industry. Do you think there could be more investment on the local front? Something we've talked a lot about here. Local clubs, professionalized rec, local clubs and facilities. In the last week, we've been talking a little bit about the marriage of academics and sports. I think this is super newfangled, and I have some concerns about it. But it does seem like there's an opportunity for the pie to come over to where people are spending 5 days a week instead of 2. How do you feel about that?
I do. I think there's an opportunity there, but it's so granular and it's such at the local level. And the other thing, I always like taking a step back, and I say this, before being involved in this and starting focus on the field. My background was in like education ed tech and even before that, biology of all things. So it came from a different lens. And the thing that I realized being involved in this is the minute you start to if parents ever feel that you are commoditizing something for their kids, and it's not Disneyland, right? Where it's straight up like, look, this is our value proposition we're going to give you. And I say that you pay us X, we'll give you Y, and we're going to make you great service. Parents, like, I've been to Disneyland. I open up the wallet. I get it. It's an amazing experience. I know what I'm doing. It's very blatant. Like, we're going to charge you money for this. When you get into like the realm education or youth sports and the feeling of something that is a good or a product that is to be developing the kids, and you have an air of more than just I'm going to deliver X service for Y, right? Like when it drifts out of the transactional into the emotional, you have a threat of repelling your customers so badly if everything feels like I'm just going to screw the margins a little bit more to make a little more money. Because it's like, whoa, hold on, these are my kids here. Like, I'll let Disney take advantage of me because I know what I'm doing here. I'm not going out to buy a roller coaster every day. But if you're saying you're going to, educate my kid, but we're going to this tournament instead of that tournament, but that tournament's should be a better thing for my kid, but we're going to go there because it makes you more money. Hold on here. And similarly, like you see it in education all the time. The minute a school, that's why for-profit education has such a repellent stink to it relative to nonprofit education, nonprofit universities, even though nonprofit universities are mega dollar businesses.
Huge.
Does that make sense? Is that like
100%? 100%. What are you guys seeing? I mean, you work with it at Focus, an opportunity to talk about what you guys are doing and give an update on what you're doing. But what are you sort of seeing firsthand from customers and partners as you guys help them deal with pain points? What are some of the pain points they're trying to overcome today? Maybe how does that tie into some of the demands or questions that parents have about the current youth sports landscape?
So, I mean, the things that we're right now, we're in a spike because like rec sports happen in spring. Like you have their fall sports, there's some rec, you have your summer, but really spring is for rec. Whether it doesn't matter really what it is. You have the crossover, the winter sports, hockey coming into it, basketball's coming into it, baseball strikes up, soccer's still going. Rec soccer occurs in the fall traditionally, but depending on the time of year, the fields are getting de-iced or out here, that's nice weather. You get the idea. I preface that because that's what's happening right now. What we're dealing with in our client base, because we have we have for-profit, nonprofit, leagues, clubs, events, all this sort of stuff. What we're dealing with right now is the rec. And rec is a huge thing. That's where kids start. And the problem we're dealing with, and I would say it all comes down to communication. If you do not fill every void with some sort of communication about what is happening to those parents, negativity is going to, it's like negative thoughts, negative things are going to fill that void. So where there's a void, you fill with negativity. So right now and so I'll give you an example. This goes back to the schedule thing. Why I started yelling at the clouds in the first place. Schedules are really hard to make. All parents want to know is, where do I need to send Johnny 3 months from now on a Saturday? Because guess what? I have 20 other things going on. This may be the most important thing to you, but I got a life. We may have to go to see grandma. We may have a vacation, whatever. Can you just tell me where I need to go? And if you don't tell them where they need to go, it's like, these people are bastards. Why aren't they telling me where I need to go? When the reality is it's incredibly complex. So you need to tell those people, hey, we hear you. We know what's happening. Here's what you need to know, and we're going to get this to you by X. And if you need something by X, if you need it further, call us, right? Communication. So
private clubs... Are the private
it's the same thing for private clubs.
Yeah, my view is, are the private clubs better about it because they could dedicate someone to it, whereas the volunteer or mostly volunteer-led rec organizations, there's a guy who's just overwhelmed, a woman who's overwhelmed.
So depends on the club. This isn't a private, for-profit, nonprofit. It's just who is in charge of and understanding the pain points parents are feeling. A 25-year-old guy who's a successful coach is not going to empathetically understand what a mom and dad with 3 kids in their 40s are going through. I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. You're an idiot. Know what that guy needs to do is hire a mom or a dad who has kids to be his COO or operator if he's going in that route. Because those parents will inherently get.
He's worried about his ratio that night. He's thinking about his ratio that night. He's got to get out of the work. He's got to hit happy hour.
He's thinking about, how am I going to make sure this kid is that we're going to win this tournament? And the mom's saying, I don't give a shit if we're going to win. Where am I going? What's the hotel block I need to do? What uniform does Sally or Johnny need to wear? Mm-hmm. Those things, we're in this bubble of operators. Like, we focus on certain things, and you have to break out of that bubble of what are the things that your customers need, your clients need. And I don't care who you are, for-profit, nonprofit, etc. If you can't empathize and understand the pain points you have, those parents have, and focus on those immediate needs, you're getting lost. And so circling back to like my whole rant, that's the essence of it. That's why the schedule is so damn important. You have parents and people with kids who are willing to shell out and open the dollar, the Disney effect. But if you start telling me, hey, I have an AI-based scouting app, great. But what time's the freaking game?
The plumbing.
Like, this is the thing. So that's
every company. Maybe we start this here. Every company needs a CMO, a chief mom officer. How do you like that? Okay. I know you speak in terms of phrase. I like your Egg McMuffin of services, your easy button. You feel like a big chief mom officer.
God bless it. I got to give a shout out to my original guy, who my man Corey Harris, who helped me when I started this. He was one young guy who came in, and he helped me sort of give the next thing, and then he trained in. He ended up wanting to go do his own thing. Like, brilliant young guy. but it's like we traded. Hey, I'll give you an opportunity to do something. You give me your expertise, and it worked out great. But Corey gave me a book. It's called "I Never Metaphor I Didn't Like," and because I speak in metaphors constantly, and not even honestly, I don't even realize I'm doing it half the time.
I could tell when your ad copy today is the Egg McMuffin at services. I'm like, Tyler came up with that because I could just tell by the way you talked to me at Next Up. The first thing you said was like the easy button. The easy button.
It's the easy button, yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the thing when you talk about like every sports company should realize and even I don't care if you're building a tech product, if you're building a facility, if you're trying to build a school, or if you have a club, or you're building something, you have to think you have 3 customers. You're always hitting in new sports. You have the kid. Kids got to like it. Kids just got to like it. Whether it's a cool platform, whether it's a thing, kids want to see himself on there, believe like, hey, this is neat. I like your field. Hey, this field's pretty sweet. Hey, look, they got a slide over there, right? Kids got to like it. The dad has got to respect it. I say the proverbial dad, the dad figure, whoever the dad is, got to respect it. And it just means, all right, I see this AI tool. It's all right. That's actually pretty slick. Okay, I can respect what they're doing. Oh, I see this facility. It's nice. Good parking. Good lines. Okay, I can respect that. The coach. All right, this guy's not a complete doofus. I respect it. Okay, that's good. I got to respect. You get respect. But the third, the most effing important one, is the mom figure. Because guess what? She's got to trust you. You don't get trust, you are effed. And the minute you lose that trust, sayonara, my friend. So that's why when I hear folks saying, hey, if we can just get a couple more sweatshirts out of our families, we're going to make X more dollars. I'm like, buddy, guess what you just cut your legs out on? Trust.
You lost mom.
The minute that the mom or the mom figure finds out, oh, they're just trying to screw me out of my dollars, I'm thinking that trust balance there is wrong. Unless, this is the weird thing, they can actually say that to the parents. Look, we are going to try to get you to buy our gear. If you're upfront and own your stuff, you can create trust. But trust is the number one thing. Like, respect, trust. And if you can't deliver and figure out who you're delivering for each of those, whether it's a tech product, a facility, a freaking NIL deal, an NIL deal, any of the service companies, you're going to have a problem because that's your customer. Honestly, I need more caffeine because I am like.
No, you're good.
This is good.
You're alive and well.
I don't think you need any more caffeine. I think
I'm like so far. I spent 2 days on a field, and it was so guys like Kyle, you're talking about. It was so wonderful. Like it was so wonderful to see these kids play. Families are out there. We had like teams out here in the Bay Area come together. I brought my own 14U, like a team that my kid. It was kind of like. Great. Well, we're going to help organize it. And I got to get my own team's kid to play, and parents were chatting, hanging out. We went to a little, impromptu. Hey, when we're done, we're going to go to this beer garden. Kids like have dinner and stuff. And that's the essence of it. And people are excited about it. And guess what? The kids liked it. The dads respected it, and the moms trusted it. And we had a great freaking time. And everybody there, it was there.
You got me going through my head now because I was the coach and I was the only coach and the only official for the 7 rec game that the coaches, we also have to officiate. And I called a foul with 7 seconds to go. Kid got poked in the eye and I sent him to the line. I don't even think we're supposed to send kids to the line in this league. But I'm like, there's 7 seconds to go. It's a tie game and he got poked in the eye. This kid shooting free throws. So now I'm like, did I get respect, trust, and likability out of that? I don't know.
Let me ask you.
And he was on my team. He made it. He was happy.
No, here's the thing. Did you own it?
Yeah, I hand up. I was reffing our own team, but I was like, you know what? These kids crying. You're going to the line.
This is the other thing I will tell you, and this is, I think, across all businesses, but this is something we hunt for. And when we hire people and when we bring people, and then also we hunt for with our clients, ownership, owning a decision. Because we will tolerate our clients making decisions that are bass backwards. We'll tolerate clients getting pissed off at us or being something, and as long as they own it. The lack of ownership and decision-making is one of the biggest challenges we come up with in working with groups, is because decision-making is freaking hard, and also because there's so much sometimes folks don't want to own it. Those people who own things, especially in new sports, are like gold, right? Because you have to think about, and I'll give you an example. Think about it this way. Volunteer or even a club director, and I think in the realm of like the service provider, right? You are volunteering in a local league, right? Every decision you make, especially around a schedule, is going to piss off someone, right? Now, you can ultimately the best leagues set it up so ownership gets defrayed to the league makes these decisions. We're going to execute on behalf of the league. So it's the ownership is like deflected amongst a group of people. So you can't get mad at, all right, the league's pissed off, right? But someone still has to own like this is what we did, right? It is hard, and I understand why if you're coming home and you're a teacher and you're, or you're any profession, and then you have to deal with parents being pissed off because you owned a decision that had to get made. Like I empathize completely with why they don't want to do it. But if they don't own it, it creates a gray area and creates a place where people can then start spinning it out. And guess what's creating the gray area? A void. And what gets filled with a void?
Stuff.
Negativity. We went over this.
I didn't know we were in class. That was like total teacher caught you off guard moment.
One more for you. If you got one more. If I was able to make you use sports czar, what's one thing that you would would want to change about the industry right now?
Me being you sports czar?
You're the czar. You're the czar of you sports.
If I could change one thing, that's impossible. I would say that's impossible to say one thing. If only because we're talking about something that's such a disparate thing. How am I going to talk to the folks trying to build out the facilities in Ohio to the guy, the guys who are running fast break AI, right? I guess the one thing I'd say, there's such different things. So the thing I would, harp on and use the bully pulpit for would be like, hey, we got to focus on two things. One, how's it benefiting the kid? Like, how are you handling the respect, trust element? And the second aspect, and this is for the folks coming in who want to invest, is answer me this. After it all, what happens next? After your rollout and you spell it again, then what? And then what? So if you can tell me, you need to have an answer for the end, then what? Because it's great if you make money, but if you inflate a bubble and it all falls to shit, and then what? Right? That's the thing. So focus on those two things and then put it on the and then what, and we're good. But those are the things I would I would own the decision to push the shit out of that down everybody's constant thinking.
I think you're maybe our second two-time guest. We're actually having Brian Liftback on maybe this week or next. So he will be also a second two-time guest.
Can I give a shout out to Brian and Jeremy?
Go ahead.
Brian and Jeremy and guys like Chad. The other thing I think that's so great about this industry that I've experienced is it's a relatively not insular, but connected place. And we have another thing is another sort of saying is if you don't burn bridges, but if you do, you nuke the hell out of it because we're so tight. So don't burn a bridge. But once you do, if you're going to, it's got to be fully, because it's so tight. Brian and Jeremy were some of the folks who helped me push this thing along. They gave us an opportunity. So whenever I hear Brian or Jeremy's name, I'm like, great, good people. I love what they're doing on the community side. Nobody does community like League Apps. And they really own they really do a great job of owning that aspect of it.
Speaking of, we saw today, Pete Francellos from Teen Snap liked Brian's new feature on LinkedIn, and Kyle and I were texting. We're like, look at this, kumbaya.
Well, again,
not everyone gets along. Guy. Not everyone, but a lot of guys, a lot of the guys get along.
They're rooting for each other. Side. That's a great thing. And Pete, again, is doing a great job with the guys at Team Snap, doing a great job doing stuff. So, anyways.
Are you coming to the event? Where do we leave that?
You're in Philadelphia.
Yeah, you're coming. Okay.
I'll be there.
You'll be there.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. And that's the show. Thank you to Tyler from Focus on the Field for coming on. Thank you to you, the listener. Get your Buying Sandlot Summit tickets at buyingsandlot.com or the link in this description of the video, and we will talk to you on Wednesday.